Welcome back, everybody. Time for another mini lesson, this time on probably the most difficult thing that we learn in this course, which is how to cite our sources within the text. So most people who are creating a reference or a research paper of any kind know that there's going to be a bibliography at the end of it. If you are used to MLA terminology from high school, you might have known of those as works cited pages. In APA, of course, we call them reference pages. And they contain all of the necessary information for our readers to find the same sources that we used when we were creating our paper. That's only half of citation. The other half is that whenever we utilize resources, we have to do what's called in-text citation, sometimes also known as parenthetical citation. There's a lot of terminology that you'll hear kind of used interchangeably. But those are the little tiny citations that go inside the essay itself or the paragraph itself or the whatever, the document itself. And they have to match up with the reference page. So if there is an item on the reference page, there has to be at least one in-text citation for that same source in the paper itself. And vice versa. If there is a source that is mentioned or utilized, quoted, paraphrased, summarized, it's got to have the little in-text citation, and that has to match up with what goes on the references page. So I mentioned in one of the other videos, you may or may not have seen that one yet, but I mentioned that that's the main reason whenever you are conducting research, you want to create your bibliography before you do anything else, before you write the paper, before you even think about writing the paper. Because when you go to cite the sources with the in-text citations, you're going to need to know what is on the reference page. So we're going to look at a completed reference page to start. So let me open that Word document for you. And this should be looking familiar. This is kind of the same template that we've used before. But what I've done for this one is created a pretty substantial reference list. You'll notice that this has some websites on it. It has much more library research, but it does have some websites. And I wanted to show you what you are going to use for the in-text citations for each one of these. So in APA, the in-text citation will always contain the year. Now, if there is no year, and with climate change, I was actually having a hard time finding any sources that didn't have a year. But here's what that looks like. If you do not have a publishing date for a website, you will have an N period, D period, which of course stands for no date. And that will still be used in the in-text citation. The other thing that will go in the in-text citation is going to be whatever comes first here on the references list. So if we have authors, and most of the library sources do in fact have authors, we will need the last names of the authors. If we do not have an author, then we're going to need the title, because that's what's going to come first in the works cited or the reference. So you will notice that 3 of our sources start identically. In fact, 2 of them have the exact same title name. The Wikipedia article, which you should never use, by the way. I just put it on here because it's a good example. And the dictionary.com entry. Both of those are just called climate change. So we're going to have to do something to indicate which source we're talking about. The others are going to be fairly easy, but there's also some techniques for smoothing your research into your writing that I want to cover here as well. So in those first three, for example, if I'm going to introduce a quote or a paraphrase or some piece of information from the article that is in the New Scientist, which is called Climate Change: A Status Report, I might want to highlight the fact that this comes from a magazine called New Scientist. So I'm going to go up here and we're just going to put little random, here's what it would look like. I'm not going to write out the whole paragraphs, but let's say I wanted to cite some of the statistics. I'm going to put, according to New Scientist, space. And then I'm going to have immediately after that, I'm going to have the year. And it was what, 2021. Okay, so 2021, but New Scientist is not what comes first in the reference, right? So I also need the title. So I'm going to put climate change. And I'm going to include that subtitle because I have others that start with climate change. And it was what? A status report. Okay. Comma 2021. I put my end parentheses, and then I'm going to have my facts and statistics that come from that source. Now, this is a little bit different from what you may have experienced in high school if you were using MLA, because the in-text citation in MLA typically comes at the end of the information. You may name the source just like this, according to New Scientist, but you're not going to have that citation until the very end. This is a little bit different. So let's say we also needed to cite some sort of fact from Wikipedia, but I don't want to name Wikipedia because it's just not a great source. Now I'm going to put it at the end of the paragraph or the end of the sentence, and I'm still going to say climate change because I have to, because that's what comes first. Oops, not capital though. Comma, Wikipedia, comma, and that one was 2022. Okay, so if I don't name it, I can put it at the end of the sentence. If I'm naming it, which is much better, but I wouldn't be naming it if it was a source that was not reputable. Let's do another one. So let's do this one, Makajani and Ramana. I now have two authors. So both of their names are going to be either mentioned in my sentence or they're going to be inside the in-text citation. I like the name of the journal, but I'm going to use their names. So let's say, in fact, I'm just going to copy because it's going to be easier for me. We're going to come up here and we're going to say these two people. Oops, I want the right font though. And I do not need the first initial when I'm naming them in the sentence, the authors, and that one was 2021. And let's say, I think we're going to have, probably going to have page numbers available for that. Let's say we got some information from the very last page of the article. So we're going to put P214 and we're going to then give a quote. That's what that will look like. If I don't name them, I can say a study finds, and then I'm going to put their names inside the parentheses this time. 2021, and let's say that one was on page 209. That blah, 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 blah. That's what the in-text citation would look like if I'm not naming them. If I decided I wanted to put the journal title, let's do that with the next one. Why I keep clicking on the wrong thing. So the next one, in fact, and these, I did this backwards. One thing I always try to explain to people whenever you are going to your reference page, instead of just hitting enter, you want to actually create a page break. This is why. So we're going to click right before and we're going to insert a page break. There we go. Now it won't do that weird thing where it's making everything go wonky. All right, so the next one, I'm gonna skip down. I'm gonna use a lower one. Let's use Somerville here. So the title of the article or the title of the journal is Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And I have an article title here as well. I'm going to use both of these things. And we're going to say, let's make sure we got the right, oops. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Now, I did not use the author's name, so I will use it, which was Somerville, and it's 2020. And let's say with this one, I don't have access to the page numbers. Let's say it was just an HTML document, and so I can't see the page numbers. I'm not going to put anything. I'm just going to leave it with just the year. An article and points out blah, 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 blah. So you do not always have to use a phrase to start off, but it does clarify when you are using information and it does make you sound really professional. So what would we use for these others in the in-text citation? Shaftell 2022, no page number because that's a website. Shorman Oymet 2021. This one does have page numbers. If we can see the original page number, we would use it. For this one, we would use United Nations 2022. And for this one, it's got a super long title. We can shorten that and say what we can do. That's what I would use there. So that I'm not having to type out that whole title. But you always use what comes first in the reference. Notice these are in alphabetical order. They are not in the same order that we use them in the document necessarily. I mean, in this case, I was just kind of going through and doing it, but that's what you will do when you do your in-text citations. I would encourage you to use the in-text citations the second you write it. Do not decide, oh, I'm going to put this stuff in and then I'm going to come back later and add citations. That is almost always a recipe for disaster. If you need help with your in-text citations, don't forget to reach out to the academic writer, to Tutor Me, to me, to the drop-in hours that are available, and get some extra help with those sorts of things. But that is how you do in-text citations in a nutshell.